Chapter 6. Fragile Safety. The weight of the bloody pieces of carved-up Dracolith carcass digs into my shoulders as we approach the Sunatak village. The debate finally having been settled when I mentioned to Tornu that we might as well go along with Zolesh's ways if we are to learn more about them. My arms ache, and I'm pretty sure I've got scales embedded in places I'd rather not think about. I definitely have blood drying in places I don't want to try to scrub. But the discomfort fades as I catch my first glimpse of Zolesh's home. Ron's breath. It's like something dreadful that even Tornu never mentioned in his tales. The village is a fortress of bone and hide, with structures that look like they could withstand a stampede of angry Dracoliths. Everywhere I look, I see weapons, spears, clubs, things I don't even have names for. And the people? They move with a purpose, their eyes always scanning, always alert. It's a far cry from the laid-back atmosphere of our Takakin village. A group of children race past us, and I'm stunned to see they're all carrying knives nearly as big as my forearm. Back home, we don't even let the kids near the cooking fires until they're practically adults. Here, it looks like they're born ready for battle. "Welcome to my home," Zolesh says, his chest puffing with pride. I glance at Tornu, expecting to see disapproval, but his face is a mask of careful neutrality. I can practically hear his thoughts. Observe, analyze, judge later. It's one of his favorite lessons, but right now I'm finding it hard to follow. As we make our way through the village, the stares of the Sunatak people burn into us. Some look curious, others wary. A few even look hungry? I really hope that's just my imagination. Zolesh leads us to a large structure near the center of the village. "My family dwelling," he explains. "Them wanna meet you." We duck inside, and I'm immediately hit by the smell of smoke, herbs, and something I can't quite place. It's not unpleasant, just different. As my eyes adjust to the dim light, I see 3 figures rise to greet us. "Ma, Pa, Bulo," Zolesh says. "These be Takakin. Yoren and his teacher, Tornu." Zolesh's father steps forward first. He's built like a bear, with scars crisscrossing his arms and a gaze that could probably stop a charging Dracolith in its tracks. "Welcome," he rumbles, and I resist the urge to take a step back. "Any friend of my son be a friend of mine." His mother is next, and to my surprise, she pulls me into a bone-crushing hug. "You must be hungry," she says, already ushering us towards a cooking fire. "Sit, sit. We gonna feast in your honor." Bulo, Zolesh's sister, hangs back, eyeing us with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. She can't be more than 13, but the knife at her hip looks well used. As we settle around the fire, I can feel the tension in the air. Tornu is rigid beside me, his eyes constantly moving, assessing. Zolesh's family is trying to be welcoming, but there's an undercurrent of something. Wariness? Excitement? It's hard to tell. "So," Zolesh's father begins, breaking the silence, "you help my son take down a Dracolith. Impressive for outsiders." I can hear the implied question. Are we friends or potential threats? Tornu clears his throat. "We were fortunate to have Zolesh's help. He's a skilled warrior." Zolesh beams at the praise, but his mother frowns. "Warrior, yeah, but much reckless. Always chasing the next big hunt." "Ma," Zolesh groans, and for a moment he sounds just like any embarrassed son. It's oddly comforting. As the conversation continues, I find myself torn. Part of me is fascinated by everything I'm seeing and hearing. The Sunatak way of life is so different from ours, yet there are threads of familiarity. The way Zolesh's mother fusses over him, the proud glint in his father's eye, it's not so different from home. But another part of me is acutely aware of the danger. These people are survivors, hardened by a life of constant struggle. One wrong move, one misunderstood word, and who knows what could happen. Tornu is clearly thinking along the same lines. His responses are carefully measured, giving away nothing while trying to learn as much as possible. Zolesh, caught between his family and his new friends, is trying to bridge the gap, but I can see the strain on his face. As the night wears on, I find myself relaxing despite my better judgment. The food is strange but delicious. The stories Zolesh's father tells are thrilling, reminding me of some of Tornu's stories. I think I even catch Tornu leaning forward, engrossed in the tales, and even Bulo seems to be warming up to us. But as I catch Tornu's eye, I see a warning there. "Don't get too comfortable," it says. "We're still strangers here." I nod slightly, acknowledging his unspoken caution. But as I turn back to listen to another of Zolesh's father's tales, I feel a spark of excitement. This is what I wanted, what I've yearned for. To see new things, meet new people, experience a world beyond what I've known. It's terrifying and exhilarating all at once. And as I look around at this family of hardened survivors, at my cautious uncle, at Zolesh caught between two worlds, I feel the warmth of comfort begin to settle in my chest. The journey back to Takakin is a blur of aching muscles and swirling thoughts. Thanks to Volos, the Sunatak healer, our wounds from the Dracolith encounter are little more than fading scars. I can't help but feel a surge of pride every time I glance at mine. Battle scars. Proof that I'm not just some helpless kid anymore. Tornu, on the other hand, seems lost in thought. He's not harsh or hostile. Our rift seems to have healed along with our injuries. But he's unusually quiet. I catch him watching me sometimes, his expression unreadable. It's probably nothing. Just Tornu being Tornu, overthinking everything as usual. I keep replaying the events over in my head. We would never have met such incredible people had I not acted on my impulses. See, Uncle Tornu? All you need to do is stop worrying so much, act on your instincts every once in a while, and maybe you wouldn't be so afraid all the time. I definitely don't say that out loud, though. As we crest the final hill overlooking our village, I'm ready to burst with excitement. Wait until everyone hears about our adventure. Maybe Lolly will think twice about throwing rocks at my shins for sport when she sees my new battle scars. Or maybe Ekra won't give me such a hard time about not being manly enough anymore. But the words die in my throat as I take in the scene in front of us. Something's wrong. The usual bustle of village life is gone, replaced by an eerie stillness. There are long scratches along several huts, and is that blood? My stomach lurches. Uncle, I start, but Tornu's already moving, his pace quickening as we approach the village. We're barely past the outskirts when we hear the shouting. Ansel's voice, raised in anger, a rare sound that sends chills down my spine. And there's Ekra, her raspy tone sharp with fear and fury. As we round the corner to the village center, chaos greets us. Ansel and Ekra stand nose to nose, their faces flushed with anger. A crowd has gathered, some nodding in agreement with Ekra, others murmuring support for Ansel's words. We can't ignore this threat, Ekra shrieks, her bony finger jabbing at Ansel's chest. A Dracolith, Ansel, in our village. We must act now before more lives are lost. Dracolith? In the village? What the void? My blood runs cold. This can't be a coincidence. Ansel's voice is calmer, but I can hear the strain beneath it. And what would you have us do, Ekra? Abandon our homes? The lands we've tended for generations? If that's what it takes to survive, yes. Ekra's eyes are wild. We've grown soft, complacent. This is a sign. We must move, fortify, prepare for war. Suddenly, Jola's weathered voice cuts through the argument. Control yourself, Ekra. In all your years, you've never once suggested abandoning our lands. Have you forgotten the Ancient One's protection? Ekra whirls on Jola, her face contorted with frustration. Protection? Where was this protection when the Dracolith attacked? Jola's eyes narrow, her voice taking on a rhythmic quality. Listen and remember. Long ago, when Taka first settled these lands, the Ancient Ones cast a great shield over our borders. They spoke of a time when darkness would threaten, when Vortul's influence would grow strong. Ekra scoffs, rolling her eyes. More fairy tales, Jola. We need action, not bedtime stories. Ignoring her, Jola continues, her gaze distant. They said, when the barriers weaken and the forest turns cruel, one born of Taka's line must restore the ancient rule. The borders must be renewed, but not by running, by facing what comes. Ansel sighs, pinching the bridge of his nose. Grandmother, please. This isn't the time for... Isn't it? Jola interrupts, her eyes sharp. When else, if not when our very existence is threatened? Ekra throws up her hands in exasperation. This is madness, Ansel. Surely you don't believe this nonsense. Ansel looks torn, his gaze shifting between Ekra and Jola. I don't know what to believe, but I know we can't abandon our home on the basis of one attack and an old legend. Then what do you suggest? Ekra demands, her voice dripping with sarcasm. We sit here and wait for the next attack? No, Ansel says firmly. We prepare. We fortify, but we do not run. Jola nods approvingly, while Ekra's face darkens with anger. Tornu steps forward, his presence immediately drawing attention. What exactly happened here? The crowd parts, and I see the truth of the attack written in their faces. Bandaged limbs, tear-streaked faces, eyes hollow with shock and grief. Ansel turns to us, relief and worry worrying on his face.
Tornu, Yoren, thank the ancients you're safe. We were attacked just as the sun peaked in the sky. A young Dracolith, no bigger than a man, but fierce.
His voice catches, trembling slightly with the word, and he clears his throat before continuing.
We lost 3 before we could bring it down. 7 more injured.
Who? Tornu's voice is barely above a whisper, but it cuts through the tension like a knife. Ansel's face falls, tears welling in his weary eyes.
Malira and Norn.
I feel the world tilt beneath my feet. My chest constricts, making it hard to breathe. Malira. Sweet, gentle Malira, whose colorful dyes brought life to our village. I can still smell the earthy scent of her workshop, see her kind eyes crinkling as she promised to make me boots for my future adventures. The thought that I'll never get to thank her for leaving them outside my hut, for believing in me, makes my head swim. Norn. Cocky, strong Norn, who always pushed me to be better. Despite his teasing, there was always an underlying current of support. The image of his lifeless body, that infectious grin forever silenced, makes bile rise in my throat. How could someone so vital, so alive, be gone? My legs tremble, threatening to give out. I want to scream, to deny the truth of Ansel's words, but the grief etched on every face around me confirms the horrible reality.
The injured?
Tornu presses, his voice breaking as he runs a trembling hand through his silver curls.
Tekla, and her youngest, Suro. Zivo, the fisherman. The twins, Kyra, Chiron, and Kyra. Holt, the apprentice healer, and Ramis. Melnin isn't sure that any will pull through.
Chiron and Kyra. My world stops. The twins. My friends. The ones who just yesterday were laughing with me, planning our honey heist, their eyes bright with mischief and life. No, I whisper, the word barely audible even to my own ears. My mind races back to our adventure earlier that day. Kyra's excited voice as she explained their plan, Chiron's steady presence as we faced the bees, the way they looked at me with concern when Norn caught us sneaking back in. How could that have been yesterday? How could they have gone from so full of life to this? I see them in my mind's eye, their bodies broken and still, those vibrant spirits dimmed. Kyra's infectious laugh silenced, Chiron's quiet strength shattered. The thought of never seeing Kyra's eyes light up with a new idea, or watching Chiron's subtle smirk when his sister says something outrageous, it's too much to bear. My legs give out, and I sink to my knees, oblivious to the murmurs around me. The ground beneath me feels unreal, as if at any moment it might open up and swallow me whole. Part of me wishes it would.
Yoren?
I hear Tornu's voice, distant and muffled, as if coming from underwater. But I can't respond, can't move, can't breathe. And now they might be gone, taken by the very beasts I'd faced and survived. The unfairness of it all hits me like a tidal wave, threatening to drown me in despair. I want to scream, to rage against the cruelty of fate, but all that comes out is a choked sob, my body shaking with the force of emotions I can't contain. In this moment, surrounded by the aftermath of destruction, with the fate of my closest friends hanging by a thread, I've never felt more lost, more helpless. The world I knew, the future I imagined, seems to crumble around me, leaving nothing but uncertainty and grief in its wake. Each name is a blow. Tekla, who had always slipped me an extra sweet root when I helped with the harvest, little Suro, barely 5 cycles old. I feel sick. While I was out there feeling so proud of myself for facing a Dracolith with help, these people, my people, faced one alone. My eyes are drawn to a dark mass at the edge of the village center, the slain Dracolith. It's smaller than the one we faced in the forest, sleeker, built for speed rather than raw power. Its claws, even in death, look wickedly sharp. I can't help but imagine those claws tearing into Malira, into Norn. I squeeze my eyes shut, trying to banish the image, but it's too late. I'll never be able to unsee it, never be able to unhear the names of the dead and the injured. This isn't like the end of some grand adventure anymore. Not how I imagined, anyways. I feel Tornu's hand on my shoulder steadying me. When I look up at him, I see my own pain reflected in his eyes. He knew them all, probably better than I did. Each name is a story to him, a lifetime of shared experiences now cut short or forever changed. I wish we'd never left. What good is exploring the world if you're not there to protect the people who matter most? Not that I could have been much help, but at least I would have been here. Ekra's eyes narrow as she spots me.
And where have you two been? Gallivanting about while we fought for our lives?
I open my mouth to retort, but Tornu's hand on my shoulder stops me.
We encountered dangers of our own, Ekra, but that's not important now. What matters is how we move forward.
Ansel nods.
Exactly. Ekra wants us to abandon the village,
To survive, Ekra cuts in. This is only the beginning. More will come.
We don't know that,
Ansel counters.
This could be an isolated incident. We need time to assess, to plan.
Time we don't have. Ekra's voice rises to a shriek. Every moment we waste is a moment they could attack again. Are you willing to risk your life, the lives of your kin, on the chance that this could be an isolated incident? The argument spirals, voices rising, tempers flaring. I stand there, my mind reeling. Could our encounter have caused this somehow? That voice, the strange protection I felt, did it weaken some barrier? Open a door that should have stayed closed? Or maybe it's like the tales Tornu has told time and time again. Maybe Vortul is trying to exact his wrath on Roan's creation, straining to find ways of reaching into our world and wreaking havoc. Yeah, and Weka is just going to step in and give us some sort of magic powers to what? Shield us from an entire forest full of dragons and dracoliths and griffins and who knows what else. Right, I'm sure that's it. Back to reality. Let's be honest, it's probably my fault. And no ancient one is going to pay attention to scrawny little me. I feel Tornu's eyes on me, questioning. He can tell something's bothering me, but how can I explain? How can I tell him that I might be responsible for this? Finally, Ansel's voice cuts through the chaos.
Enough. We will increase our patrols and begin work on fortifications, but we will not abandon our home. Not yet. Not without proof that the threat is ongoing.
It's a compromise that satisfies no one, but it's something. As the crowd begins to disperse, I catch Ekra's eye. The hatred there makes me flinch. As we make our way to his hut, Tornu's hand on my shoulder is both comforting and terrifying.
Yoren, he says softly, is there something you need to tell me?
I swallow hard. I don't know, Uncle. I really don't know. As I walk the perimeter of our village, my thoughts and guilt wreaking havoc on my spirit, I notice Ansel standing just outside the palisade, his back resting against a totem pole, where each Takakin chief in the past has left a carving of their own. His eyes fixed on the distant tree line, his weathered face is etched with worry lines I've never noticed before. In his hand, he clutches a small, intricately carved stone, an artifact passed down through the generations of Takakin chiefs. Chief? I approach cautiously. He turns, a weary smile touching his lips.
Yoren, what brings you out here?
I shrug, unsure myself. I don't know, to be honest. It's hard to make sense of how I'm feeling. Then I saw you out here and wanted to see how you were doing. Ansel chuckles, but there's no humor in it.
How I'm doing? I'm wondering how I'm going to keep our people safe. How I'm going to explain to Quovac that his wife and unborn child might not make it through the night, and whether I made the right call sending our hunters out so far.
His candor surprises me. I've always seen Ansel as unshakable, a pillar of strength for our tribe. Seeing him like this, vulnerable and doubting, it's jarring. You couldn't have known, I offer weakly.
Couldn't I?
Ansel's voice is sharp.
A chief should know, should anticipate. My grandmother has been warning that something feels wrong these days, like the protection that has shielded us for so long is waning. But I was so sure.
He trails off, shaking his head. My ears perk up at this. Protection? What do you mean? Ansel sighs, his thumb tracing the patterns on the stone in his hand.
There are old stories, Yoren. Stories older than even Tornu's tales. They speak of a barrier, a shield placed by the Ancient Ones to protect the Takakin. For generations, it's kept the worst dangers at bay. But now...
He gestures toward the forest, where the Dracolith attack originated.
Now it seems that barrier might be failing, and I fear we're ill-prepared for what lies beyond.
The weight of his words settles heavy on my shoulders. I think of the strange power I felt at the lake, the voices I heard. Could it be connected? Chief, I start hesitantly. I've been meaning to tell you something, about the adventure we just returned from. Ansel's eyes sharpen, focusing intently on me.
What is it, Yoren?
As I recount the inexplicable strength I felt, the voices I heard, Ansel's expression grows increasingly grave. When I finish, he's silent for a long moment, his gaze distant.
It seems, he says finally, that the changes are more far-reaching than I feared. Yoren, what you experienced, it's a sign.
A sign of what? I ask, my heart racing.
Of the Ancient One's renewed interest in our world. And that, my boy, is both a blessing and a curse.
Ansel's grip tightens on the carved stone.
We must prepare, not just for more attacks, but for a shift in the very fabric of our reality.
I struggle to process his words. What can we do? Ansel straightens, squaring his shoulders, but there's a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes.
I'm not sure, Yoren. I honestly don't know if anyone knows how to fix this, or how to prepare. It's not like something like this has ever happened before, and there's no way of knowing who will be friendly and who will be hostile.
His admission of uncertainty sends a chill down my spine. If even Ansel doesn't know what to do. But we can't just do nothing, I protest. Ansel nods, a grim determination settling over his features.
You're right. We adapt. We learn. We prepare as best we can for the unknown.
As we walk back towards the village, I feel the weight of this new knowledge pressing down on me. The world is changing. Dangers are growing, and somehow, inexplicably, I seem to be at the center of it all. My thoughts drift to the Sunatak, to Zolesh and his people. Could they have answers? Or are they facing the same uncertainties we are? Ansel, I say as we reach the palisade, what you said before, about leading us to ruin, I don't believe that. Whatever's coming, we'll face it together. He smiles, a flicker of his old strength returning.
Thank you, Yoren. Your faith gives me hope.
He places a hand on my shoulder.
Now, go rest. Tomorrow, we begin preparing for a future none of us could have imagined.
As I watch Ansel walk away, his carved stone glinting in the fading light, I can't shake the feeling that our world is on the brink of profound change. And somehow, I know I'll be right in the middle of it all.